the biggest hypocrite in the world. He was in Rockefeller's hip pocket. He was a charter member of the Trilateral Commission, which was also formed by the CFR. And later on joined both, a member of both. Solid red all the way through his administration. It was Jimmy Carter's job to convince the people of the United States that we're running out of energy. And as you might remember, the Department of Energy was actually created during his administration. Long lines at the gas pumps and so forth, and with this terrible crisis, we're going to have to get smaller cars, we're going to have to get electric cars, we're going to have to cut back. So, well, Jimmy Carter is talking this way. It so happened that our head director of the U.S. Geological Survey was a man by the name of Vincent McKelvey, Dr. McKelvey. Dr. McKelvey had the science on what we have in the United States. And he was ignoring the president, actually going around the country making speeches. He was going to the service clubs and to the high schools and colleges, telling people there is no energy shortage. We know there's not. In the United States, at present rates of supply, we have a 1,500, present rates of consumption, we have a 1,500-year supply of petroleum, a 6,000-year supply of coal, we have a 20,000-year supply of natural gas, and an unlimited supply of nuclear energy. So calm down, folks. Don't panic. We're not out. All of this is within the continental bounds of the United States, all within our power and with our control. And so what are you going to say? What did the president do? He fired him on the spot. He sent his agents from Washington. McKelvey was over in Boston giving his talk. He sent him from Washington to Boston to fire him on the spot. You are through. The president has dismissed you permanently. Go home. Why would they want to create the idea of a fuel shortage in the United States? For one thing, the greatest industrialized nation in the world, the United States, had an abundance of cheap energy. And cheap energy is the backbone of an industrial society, which we are. The idea that these men have is to bring the United States down to the level of a communist country, down to the level of a socialist country, where we have to beg for everything we have, and where poverty is the norm. They want you out of your big cars, out of your big SUVs. They want you out of your big homes. They want you out of everything that makes you prosperous. Now, in every country, you have the hierarchy, you have the elite, and you have the poor. The United States, that is minimal because we have a wonderful, productive middle class. Their purpose is to destroy the American middle class. We have a little book on that. Freedom First has a little book on that called The Marxist Attack on the Middle Class. It's excellent. It's very short reading, and it'll really put pieces together for you on this. Destroy the middle class, take away their energy, and convince them that they're going to have to cut back and tighten up and be poor. The policy of the United States government, at least since World War II, has been to spend as much money as wastefully and as rapidly as possible. Spend money pretending like you're trying to cure a problem. Spend money on wars that are expensive, not easy wars. Like an easy war would have been Cuba, right? We have Fidel Castro there. We could have wiped him out in a day, probably. We don't fight easy wars. We go way halfway around the world as far as we can, where it's expensive, where things are difficult, and where you don't have Americans witnessing the fact that we're not really fighting, that we're playing games there. Waste our money, waste our energy, demoralize the American people. Think they can't win in a country like Vietnam, where you're fighting half-starved rice paddy farmers. The name of the game is to waste money as wastefully as possible and as rapidly as possible to impoverish us. Almost anybody can figure this out. You look at the stimulus business and the bank bailouts. Well, these are the guys they bailed out. They bailed out the billionaires. That's who they bailed out. And I'll guarantee you they didn't need any bailout. And you also open the borders, because if you can bring in people who are already in the poor class and increase the number of poor class in the United States and drain the United States to feed them and give them welfare and food stamps and education and health care and birth care for their little children, we will, pretty soon, we'll be just like they are. And besides that, they will vote for welfare. They will vote for socialism, because that's all they've ever known. That's all they have in Mexico, socialism. They'll vote for the guy that promises them the most. The United States is being deliberately impoverished, and the presidency has been under control for 95 years. Ronald Reagan. George Bush was his vice president. He could not get the nomination at the Republican convention unless he picked Bush. Those were the terms and conditions. Why Bush? Because Bush was both a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, an arch insider, and he made sure that the world that Reagan ran went into the global camp. And unfortunately, that applied economically as well. So Reagan was an economic conservative, obviously, but he spent more than all the three preceding presidents before him. The national debt, actually we increased the debt. The red ink went up higher with him than any other president. The media defended him as a conservative. They wanted, in the minds of American people, okay, now you've got your conservative, and then we will follow this by some disasters that prove that you're probably as well off with FDR or Woodrow Wilson or Jimmy Carter. Phony, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to say. When I was in California, I worked on his governor campaign, and he didn't keep his promises there either. I was in business, and we didn't want state withholding. We didn't have state withholding then. And it was the talk of California while he was campaigning. He campaigned against state withholding, and that's why I worked on his campaign. The very first thing to go through the California legislature was withholding for all California state employees, and he did not veto the measure. But preceding that, he said, "My feet are cast in concrete on this issue." And I believed him. And anyway, we won't belabor that. Okay, then of course he was followed by Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton could do anything he wanted, get away with it. He was impeached by the House, but not by the Senate. Isn't that interesting? You think if the senators had been appointed by their states like they were back in 1913, you bet he would have been impeached. But our Senate today are rubber stamps for centralizing and concentrating powers in Washington. Here is the son of the insider. I have a feeling that his father told him not to get his name on the rolls of the CFR because it didn't hurt him. It actually backfired on his father. And in fact, it was Ronald Reagan. When George Bush was campaigning against Reagan, you remember before Reagan got the nomination the year before, these two were both on the campaign trail for president. And Reagan called him an insider, accused him of being a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and everything. So I think his father told his son, don't get your name on that book if you're going to run for president. So he didn't, but we got wars. We got a war that we have no business being in. A war for which there were no weapons of mass destruction, and many, many other problems. A war declared by the president, not by Congress. And that goes way back. The last war we declared was against Japan and Germany and Italy by FDR. Since then, there's been no declaration of war. Congress has not issued a declaration of war. As you know, in the Constitution, that is required. And you can see how arrogant they are in declaring that they'll do whatever they want. Also, funding for war in the Constitution is only 2 years. And they extended that far beyond just through sheer audacity, saying, well, we're going to do it. Well, we're going to send 20,000 more troops there because we're going to do it. So anyway, where are we going with this? We end up here with Obama, who has totally run CFR members who run Barack Obama. The whole house is full. Everybody in his administration is an insider. Obama himself may as well be a communist, and he might be a communist, who knows, but he's certainly not an American. What are we going to do? Is there a solution? I'll guarantee you there is. And if there weren't, I would have no pleasure in being here at all. I would not. I'm not that much of a masochist. We're not here to beat up on ourselves, but there are some answers. And the amazing thing about it is the answer didn't come from anybody in our generation. The answer is 223 years old. It came from James Madison. He told us what to do if we ever get in a situation like this. Our founding fathers were brilliant. They were farsighted. They had done their homework. And if they had a motto at all, their motto was, during the convention of 1787, was that it is the nature and disposition of almost all men. Once they gain a little authority, they begin to take unfair advantage of others. And that was the theme through the convention. And that is why the Constitution is written in the way that it is written. These are safeguards, roadblocks, speed bumps in the Constitution deliberately to slow down tyranny. Makes it a little clumsy sometimes when you want to get something done, going through 2 houses of Congress and 2 chambers and having all these committee hearings and everything. But thank God for the hearings, and thank God for the different departments, because fast government is a takeover government. Well, let's take a look at what Madison had to say here. This is from the Federalist Papers, and as you probably know, the Federalist Papers is the Founding Fathers' statement. Here's what we meant by what we said in the Constitution. You don't need a Supreme Court or an attorney or a Philadelphia lawyer to tell you what's in there. All you have to do is read the Federalist Papers, and this is in it. The House of Representatives can not only refuse, but they alone can propose the supplies requisite for the support of government, finally reducing, as far as it seems to have wished, all the overgrown prerogatives of the other branches of government. Prerogatives here means powers, all the other powers of the other branches of government. This power over the purse may in fact be regarded as the most complete and effectual weapon with which any constitution can arm the immediate representatives of the people for obtaining a redress of every grievance and for carrying into effect every just and salutary measure. Do we have a grievance? Do we ever? We have a grievance. Our media and our information and our textbooks, they've been under control of these guys for 100 years. We do have a grievance, and this is the reason we're in the mess we're in today, is because the globalists and the dictators and the tyrants intend to take over the United States, get us to legislate ourselves out of all of our freedoms, which is exactly what is going on. So what do? What does Madison mean, the House alone? He means exactly that, and that's why I've got the word alone in red. Also, they can refuse. So the House can not only refuse, but they alone propose the supplies of government, meaning the money and the material, whatever the government needs. Has to come from the House. They levy the taxes and they hand out the money. They are the only ones that get their hands in the treasury. Our founding fathers provided for that in the Constitution. So how can this be accomplished? How can we get the House to use that power to shut down the other departments of government? Cut off their money. Today, a simple majority in the House of Representatives can say, all right, Mr. President, we're not writing one check until you get your department under the Constitution. Supreme Court, we're not paying your salaries or any other expense you have until you start making moral decisions under the high standards of the American people, instead of all this perverse crap that you're giving us. Then we will start paying you the money. They can even say to the Senate, the guys who are now popular guys in the media and everything don't have to face their state legislature. They can say to the Senate, sorry, Senate, you don't get any more money until you get back under the Constitution. When you get back under the Constitution, we'll be writing the checks. They can also say to the Federal Reserve, no more access to the Treasury. You guys want to make a living, you're going to have to make an honest living, because we're shutting you down. We're cutting off your money. The House can do that. There's the most marvelous power, as he expresses it, is that the most effectual weapon with which any constitution can arm our representatives. That is our weapon. It was given to us. And how are we going to do it? Okay, to start with, we know we've got 435 districts, right? We have 435 members of the House of Representatives. Okay, do we need them all? No, we only need half of them. We don't have to eat the whole elephant. We only have to get into half of it. Or half plus one. We need 218 conservative constitutionalists in the United States Congress. Men who will stand up and name names, identify the enemy, identify all these guys in the administration who are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, who've been running things for years, who have dominated every president of the United States ever since Wilson, with the exception of those two, with the exception of the two constitutionalists we had in there. They can do it. 218 can do it. Okay, where does that put you and me? How are we going to accomplish that? Okay, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at what the 218 can accomplish. They do not have to write a bill. In order to cut off the money, it is not legislation. It is refusal to write any legislation. So and that means that it doesn't have to be in concurrence with the Senate, as the Constitution would normally require. They don't have to. The Senate doesn't have anything to do with this. And the President of the United States cannot veto it, because there's nothing to veto. There's no bill. He's just out of money. I see this as the most brilliant thing that has ever occurred, that has ever been given to us. The Senate has no say-so in it. The President cannot veto it. The Supreme Court can't do anything about it, has no power over it whatsoever. And besides, they're going to be moving into cheaper quarters before they start getting their money again. So what do we have here? We have a gift from God. All we have to do is get 218 congressional districts. Now, the story is better than that. When you get 218 districts, what do you automatically get with that? Without any extra work, enough electoral votes for a decent president. And you haven't even worked on it. All you've worked on is the House. But you've got your electoral votes. What's the other magic here in this? The other magic is that we don't need the corrupt areas. We don't need New York, we don't need Boston, we don't need Philadelphia, we don't need Miami, We don't need San Francisco. We don't need California. We can get every one of those 218 congressional districts in the low population, western, or more rural states. The low population, rural states, where you already have people just like you are here tonight. We can do it without the big shots. We can do it without the immoral professors. We can do it without the Supreme Court. We can do it without the Senate. We can do it without the President. Here is a way to bypass it. Madison called it power over the purse. Okay, let's break this down, what we're doing here tonight, what we're doing with Freedom First. Why are we meeting in a private home? Because these guys own the media. They're not going to give us 10 cents with this story, or 10 seconds. No way. You're not going to get this out of the media. And you're not going to get it out of the so-called conservative media. Because the conservative media that you hear on Fox News and the Weekly Standard and National Review, what they tell you is this is stupidity. We're fighting stupidity. Those liberals are so dumb. Look what they're doing in the country. Oh, when are they going to get some sense? When are they going to wake up? That's not the battle. It is not stupidity, as James Forrestal said. It is cunning. It is consistency. Stupidity gets them off the hook because that's not a criminal offense. But treason is, and we're going to call it treason. And we're going to say these people are trying to destroy our country, and we are going to name names, we're going to say who they are, and we're going to do it in 218 congressional districts. That's how we're going to save our country. The most difficult thing for people to understand is when the insiders took over the media and the colleges and the schools and used their foundation grants to create professors who would preach the global line, when they did that, they knew they were going to have opposition. They knew that. They're not dummies. They're certainly not stupid. So what did they do? They started their own opposition. They created what we think are conservative magazines and newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. News and World Report, the National Review, the Weekly Standard. We think those are conservative, don't we? Well, they are in ideology. They tell you that socialism doesn't work, and here's why, and it's stupid, and why are we doing this, and so forth. Everybody knows that. If it was only a debate between socialism and capitalism, or free enterprise and monopoly enterprise, if that was only a debate, we would have won it years ago. We would have won that in 1787 when the anti-federalists were trying to shut down the Constitution. If that was all it was, because we did win the debate then, it would have been won and over with. Here's a guy, Rupert Murdoch, is in the same camp as these guys. Rupert Murdoch is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He created Fox News. He's the founder of News Corp. He's the founder of the Weekly Standard. And he's in bed with the National Review. You think of these as the conservative sources. Sean Hannity comes on Fox News, and what does he tell you? He tells you how dumb the liberals are. And you have to agree, they really are dumb. Socialism doesn't work. We know that. He'll tell you how corrupt the schools are, how they're teaching collectivism, and some are teaching communism. That is not the problem. That's not going to save the country. Murdoch doesn't care how many flags they wave and how patriotic they talk, because that's not where the war is. The war is criminal. The war is a crime. And that's the reason we can win. You can beat fraud, but you can't beat stupidity. You can't fight stupidity. And that's why Fox News tells you it's nothing but stupidity. Glenn Beck tells you it's total stupidity. How can they be so stupid? He wrote a book arguing with idiots. It's not arguing with idiots.